Our mother always said, if there's a fight happening and it doesn't bother you, just walk the other way. She drilled this mantra into us growing up, and I followed it faithfully. Don't invite trouble, she meant. My brother, however, seemed to have skipped that life lesson entirely. Right now, he's looking at me with a grin so wide it screams it wasn't my fault. But the guilt glimmering in his eyes tells a different story. I, meanwhile, am lying flat on the ground, my head spinning like a cheap disco ball at a shady nightclub. The voices around me are faint, but the number of legs in my vision keeps doubling. And who's standing above me, casually puffing on his cigarettes as like we are in a Bollywood action sequence? Chanpreet, my beloved brother. Nothing happened, he says, exhaling smoke as if he didn't just orchestrate my downfall. He's lying. I can tell because my face is wet, my fingers are sticky, and, oh, great, it's blood. Slimy, red, and definitely mine. My vision clears just enough to spot a helmet, with glass being broken, lying next to me, a silent witness to my tragedy. At least my brain's still intact, which is a small victory. I even giggled internally, imagining telling people, hey, no traumatic brain injury. But my chuckle was short-lived because, oh boy, how did I end up being the star of this 10 p.m. drama outside a posh liquor store in Gurugram? Well, it all started a few hours ago when Chanpreet let his intrusive thoughts win. It's a brilliant idea, Chanpreet had declared confidently earlier that evening. It's a stupid idea, I shot back. Crashing a random office party? Really? Also, the chances of us getting in are literally zero. We're doing it. I've decided, he announced, rolling up his black shirt sleeves like some macho hero getting up for a fight. Give me 10 minutes. I'll call you with the name you need to use to get in. Now, take a walk. Before I could protest further, he entered through the gate, leaving me stranded outside a club surrounded by drunkards who looked like they were either searching for more booze or new ways to ruin their lives. I ignored them and started walking towards the parking lot. I wandered into the parking lot, leaned on a car, and pulled out a cigarette. Tapping my pockets for a lighter, I quickly realized I'd either dropped it or it had developed legs and walked off. I was patting my pockets, which turned into a full-blown Morse code performance. Tap, tap, tap. As I stood there, contemplating the existential crisis of an unlit cigarette, a girl walked up to me. Our eyes locked. No, it wasn't love at first sight. It was a mutual recognition of each other's immediate needs. I had the cigarette. She had the lighter. Like two puzzle pieces meant to fit together, we wordlessly struck a deal. She lit my cigarette, we took a puff each. And, just like that, we were laughing like old friends. How'd you know I was looking for a lighter? I asked, exhaling smoke and passing the cigarette back to her. I could hear your pocket-tapping Morse code from across the parking lot, she said with a smirk. Plus, the disappointment on your face was kinda hard to miss. Well, happens to the best of us, I shrugged, taking another drag before passing it back. What are you doing out here, looking so sober at this hour? Office party nearby, she said nonchalantly. Just tying up some loose ends. Maybe killing someone. She exhaled her smoke straight into my face, her eyes, which I'd found mesmerizing just seconds earlier, now smoldering with something slightly terrifying. We chatted a little more, but neither of us asked for names. She eventually walked away, leaving me with the lingering smell of smoke and a feeling that I'd just met someone I wouldn't soon forget. I checked my watch. 10 minutes had passed, but Chanpreet's so-called promise was nowhere close to being fulfilled. Frustrated, I called him. Through the ear-damaging thump of loud music on his end, I barely caught the words I needed. The name of the person I'd pretend to know to crash this party. Which company, sir? Asked a man holding a notebook, his pen poised above a list of names with signatures neatly or drunkenly scribbled beside them. Luckily, just as panic began to set in, I overheard a conversation earlier while waiting in the queue. Armed with this nugget of stolen intel, I blurted out the company name so fast that the man blinked at me, suspicious for a second. Then, to my relief, he handed over the list for me to sign. Chanpreet had explained the brilliant plan earlier. They're not checking IDs. Just sign a random name confidently and stroll right in. I told him it was a stupid idea. But Chanpreet had already made up his mind about two things before even leaving home. 1. Find a good female companion. 2. Score free alcohol. As I scanned the list, my eyes squinted in the dim light. The music thumped in the background, and the man with the notebook was practically breathing down my neck. I flipped to the second to last page, where I spotted a beautiful, untouched name, Vasu Gupta. Well, sorry, Vasu Gupta. Your identity has just been borrowed for the night. I slipped into the party with handband, which means access to free alcohol, greeted by dim lighting that made the place feel like the set of a low-budget spy movie. Disco lights swirled, the bar was overcrowded with men and women packed together like a zombie apocalypse. But one where the zombies were fueled by alcohol instead of brains, few had empty glasses and few had empty hands. On the dance floor, people were flailing about with moves that teetered on the line between dancing and legal trouble. It was chaotic, loud, and the perfect cover for Chanpreet's grand heist of free booze and bad decisions. Suddenly, an old man staggered toward me, his eyes barely open, but his grin unnervingly wide. He was accompanied by two others, who looked equally wasted but far less enthusiastic. Shobhit, he roared in my ear, loud enough to drown out the music. What a man you are! The life of the party. His breath smelled like he'd single-handedly sampled every drink at the bar. Before I could correct him, or deny being whoever Shobhit was, he kept going. And that drink you served me? Incredible. You should quit this company and open a brewery or something. Seriously, you're wasting your talent here. I gave him a nervous smile, the kind that screamed, I'm just trying not to get caught. Then came the bombshell. Wait a second, he said, while checking me out from bottom to up and leaning in uncomfortably close. Why are you wearing an earring on your left ear? Wasn't it on your right last time? I swear I noticed it when I kissed your cheek earlier. He started inspecting me like a customs officer at an airport. And weren't you wearing a black shirt? What happened to that? I froze. My brain screamed, abort mission. The old man, even hanging barely on his senses, was right. The problem? Chanpreet is my identical twin brother. He always wears his earring on his right ear. And clearly, my genius sibling had been mingling earlier in this party, wearing the same face as me, but an entirely different wardrobe. I let out a nervous laugh, shook the man's hand, and waved at an imaginary someone across the room. Oh, excuse me, gotta say hi to a friend. I yelled, and before he could interrogate me further, I bolted, straight to the washroom. Staring at my reflection in the mirror, I muttered, I need to find him. And when I do, I have questions. Namely, why was he making friends here? And, more importantly, was the old man's kiss on the cheek the kind of female companionship he'd been looking forward to tonight? When I stepped out of the washroom, I spotted Chanpreet exiting as well. Except, he was coming out of the ladies' washroom. His face lit up with an overjoyed expression when I approached him. I have many questions, I began, but I need a drink first. He grinned, eager to answer. On it, he chirped, then bolted toward the bar like a man on a mission, determined to grab us some beer. I wandered to the sitting area outside while waiting for him, eventually finding a table with 4 chairs. The place was nearly deserted, so I lit a cigarette, only to realize, yet again, that I didn't have a lighter. Great. As I sat there reminiscing about the parking lot girl, I half-joked to myself that maybe she'd appear again, magically lighting up the room and my cigarette. 7 puffs, came a familiar voice from behind me. I froze. We smoked that last cigarette way too quickly. 7 puffs. And it was gone. And we didn't even exchange names, she said, sitting down beside me, smiling as if we'd planned this reunion. At that moment, I swear, if I'd asked for my favorite football team to win the league or for my dog to come back from the dead, it would have worked. But no, it seemed the almighty powers had decided to grant me something less hypothetical. Huh. Turns out, this was the office party she'd mentioned earlier. What were the odds? It proves that bonding over cigarettes and alcohol is the one efficient way to make friends as adults. And I was now a new believer to this theory. I didn't know we worked for the same organization, she said, pulling out a lighter and setting my cigarette, which was leaning on my lips. Before I could respond, Chanpreet arrived at the table, carrying a whole tower of beer and a few glasses. Wow, he said, grinning. I didn't know you had it in you to pull cute girls. She laughed at the compliment, but her expression quickly shifted as she looked at us both. Wait a second. You guys are twins? Her surprise didn't last long. She clearly had a Pandora's box of questions. But before she could crack it open, I turned to Chanpreet. What exactly have you been up to tonight? Well, he began with a mischievous grin. Shobhit is my name for tonight. I don't know who that old man was, but I did serve him my favorite drink. The girl burst out laughing, catching both our attention. Still unsure of her name, I raised an eyebrow. Oh, so you're the charming employee/bartender everyone's talking about, she said between laughs. You're also the guy who got kissed on the cheek by the CEO of the organization. You know, the one who's, out of the closet. Chanpreet's expression was priceless. He'd been smiling proudly at charming, but as soon as she mentioned the CEO's preferences, his grin collapsed faster than a sandcastle under a wave. The two of us burst into laughter while Chanpreet stared at his beer, processing his life choices. Feeling a bit bad for my 2-minute younger brother, I decided to change the subject. By the way, what were you doing in the ladies' washroom? His confidence returned immediately. Ah, yes, he said with a sly wink. My bartending skills didn't just impress that guy. Let's just say I made a couple of lady friends, too. We didn't press further. Any encouragement. And he'd launch into an unnecessary play-by-play detail. After a pause, Chanpreet stood up, finishing his beer. Well, it's rare to see my older brother land a cute girl, so I won't ruin your chances. I leave you to lovebirds to it. With that, he strutted off, leaving us in awkward silence and shy smiles. Thankfully, she broke the ice. So, whose name did you sign at the entrance? Some guy named Vasu Gupta, I said casually. Her reaction was instant. Vasu Gupta? She exclaimed, laughing so hard she almost spilled her drink. You just saved that cheater another day of breathing. That's why he's not here. He's probably stuck outside fighting to get in. Curious, I asked her to elaborate, and she happily obliged. It turned out she discovered a few days ago that Vasu had been cheating on her for 6 months with a girl he'd introduced as his sister. They'd only found out when the sister called her, just as furious. The man had been double dating them, using the sibling card to cover his tracks. I only came to this party because we work in the same department, and I wanted to confront him, she said, lighting another cigarette. But I guess he lives to lie another day. I was stunned, sober, despite the beer, with all the info she'd just dumped on me. I needed an excuse to collect my thoughts. I need to use the washroom, I said. Gents, right? She teased, giggling. I smiled back. I'll be right back. And when I return, we'll have a normal conversation, starting with our names. When I returned, she was gone. Chanpreet appeared behind me, smirking. Where were you? I saw your girl getting literally pulled outside by some guy. Did you mess up again, elder brother? Panicking, I told him what had happened and insisted we find her. He hesitated. I need to handle something first, but I'll be right behind you, he promised. We shared each other's live location. For once, I believed him. But I couldn't wait. The girl might have been in trouble. So I rushed outside, greeted by bright lights and blaring car horns. Finally, a change of music, I thought. In the distance, I saw a crowd gathered in front of a lavish alcohol shop. Not odd for 10 p.m. on a Friday night, but what caught my attention was how everyone stood frozen, staring in one direction. Trusting my gut, I headed toward the crowd, thinking about her. And there she was. Next time, I'll manifest something bigger. Maybe my dog coming back to life. The argument between them grew louder, the kind that makes the whole world around you blur. I watched as she tried to keep her composure. But then it happened. His hand struck her across the face, forcing her to take a step back. Everything froze. The crowd, buzzing with drunken chatter a second ago, stood still like mannequins. I didn't think. I shoved through the people in front of me, ignoring their muttered protests, and lunged at him. Caught off guard, he stumbled and hit the ground. For a moment, I turned to her, my voice softer than my boiling anger. Are you okay? Her eyes filled with tears, and that was all it took for my anger to turn into rage. The guy scrambled to his feet, his face red with anger. Who the hell are you, fucker? He yelled. I took a step closer. Did you cheat on her? My tone was calm, but my hands were clenched into fists. I believed her, but I needed him to say it out loud. His smirk was disgusting. Yeah, I did. And I have no regrets. She was just a stepping stone, someone I used when I needed her. I glanced at her, worried his words might break her, but what she said next made his ego burst like a cheap balloon. Stepping stone? Me? She said, her voice dripping with disdain. Wow, so ironical that it's coming from a human who's equivalent to a participation certificate. The crowd erupted into laughter, their drunken giggles cutting deeper than any punch. His face twisted in rage. With clenched fists, he stormed toward her, clearly intending to strike again. I didn't let him. I pushed her aside, grabbed his collar with both hands, and headbutted him square in the nose. The satisfying crunch and sudden flow of blood made it clear I'd hit the mark. He staggered, but didn't stay down. Fueled by his bruised ego, he charged again. This time, I wasn't quick enough as alcohol made me slow for a moment because his whole palm of right hand, with little finger to thumb, was stuck on my face, echoing a sound of Diwali crackers. The force sent me stumbling backward, crashing into a line of parked bikes. The crowd wasn't interested in buying alcohol anymore. Their phones were out, capturing the chaos like it was their favorite Netflix drama. As I struggled to stand, I saw Chanpreet emerge from the car, his expression shifting from casual indifference to serious determination. Without hesitation, he shoved the guy to the ground, giving me enough time to get back on my feet. I was done playing fair. I grabbed a helmet from one of the bikes, ignoring the distant protests of its owner. Don't use it, someone shouted. But this wasn't about fair fights, it was about winning. Winning the fight, and maybe even winning her over. Chanpreet also felt the same tragedy as me as Vasu's right-hand slap strike him too while I was procuring the helmet, but he stood at his place. We nodded to each other, which meant of ending the fight now, but we miscalculated. Chanpreet swung a punch, aiming to end it, but the guy dodged, and instead of hitting him, Chanpreet's fist slammed into my nose with a force I didn't feel at first, thanks to the adrenaline. But I didn't hesitate. I swung the helmet like a hammer, connecting with the Vasu's face. The impact shattered the helmet's visor and sent him sprawling to the ground. Now, both of us were on the ground, him groaning in pain, me reeling from Chanpreet's accidental punch. I felt sorry for the helmet, which got into crossfire by being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I could now feel the punch impact with blood coming out of nose and Chanpreet saying, "Nothing happened." He was smoking the last cigarette out of my box. Blood trickled from my nose as Chanpreet leaned over me, cigarette in hand, and said, "Nothing happened." His words didn't help, but his calmness did. The girl rushed to check on the guy. "He's still breathing," she announced, her tone half annoyed, half relieved. No jail time, I thought, laughing weakly. But then she stood over him, her expression hardening. "Cheater," she spat, and before anyone could stop her, she kicked him square in the balls. The crowd collectively winced. Every man in the vicinity felt the phantom pain. Chanpreet pulled me to my feet and pushed me toward the car. The girl followed, helping me into the back seat as the crowd dispersed. We needed to leave before the cops showed up. As Chanpreet started the engine, I asked him, "What took you so long to get here?" He smirked. "I had to serve that old guy. You know, the one who kissed my cheek, my last drink of the evening." He paused for dramatic effect. A glass of my piss. We both burst into laughter, the kind that hurt my already aching nose. "God, give me something for this pain," I groaned. The girl smiled softly. "I've got something that might help." She leaned down, her lips brushing against mine. The pain faded, at least for a moment. She pulled back, her smile widening at my stunned expression. "You're the first person I've kissed before even knowing their name," I said, grinning through the pain. "Dinky," she replied, still smiling. "Hi, Dinky," I said, the grin growing. "I'm Keshav." Chanpreet smirked from the front seat, cigarette dangling from his lips. Finally, some action for my brother. I didn't bother replying. For once, things felt right.